and welcome to Nurses and Hypochondriacs, Andrei Tapalaga.
Hello, everyone. Nice to be here. Very excited to be on this podcast, and hopefully I can share some great stories with you.
Oh, yes, your stuff is super good. So you're coming in from London, okay? Not coming in, but we're connecting. You're in London. I'm here in Los Angeles. And so in London, do people celebrate Halloween? I mean, what's it like? It's very westernized. I know in Italy they started to go ahead and participate in Halloween festivities, which I didn't like because those are, that's my family. I'm like, hey, Halloween's our holiday, but they do celebrate Halloween now.
No, we also do celebrate Halloween. It's quite actually a big festival over here. You also see the decorations that you would see in America, and kids going trick-or-treating, dressing up really fancy and sometimes scary. And yeah, it's really great. I actually have some neighbors down the street. They always sort of like put skeletons in the front seats of their RC vans, and it just scares the whole neighborhood in the nighttime.
That is super cool. Do you have like a favorite horror movie or scary movie?
That's a hard question. I actually love horror movies, but I haven't seen a good one in a really long time. But I think if I were to say, it would either be the Final Destination series or Rosa Park, or maybe even what was it called? The Exorcist.
What is that? Oh, The Exorcist.
Yes, sorry. We are getting the accents really wrong here.
Oh, it's okay. It's awesome. The Exorcist just really freaked me out. I'm actually trying to get a priest onto the show who just published a book a few months ago on exorcisms in America, which I'm like crossing my fingers. I'm hoping he comes on. But that's a freaky one. Mine has to be, it was from the 1970s, and I remember there used to be this show called Elvira's Mistress of the Dark. Okay, so do you know who Elvira is?
No, I haven't heard of it.
Yeah, I think she's before your time.
Probably.
So they used to have, like, I believe it was on Saturday afternoons or something like that on Channel 9. I still remember this woman would dress up very macabre. She had this hair and this very sexy dress, and she was very, very dark, and she would run these old school horror movies. So my favorite always it was called Trilogy of Terror, which that's why I always try to do a Halloween trilogy during Halloween season for this podcast. And so in Trilogy of Terror, there is one specific, and I just watched it the other night. It's called Amelia. So it's a 30-minute movie shorts, and it's with this one very famous actress who I'm forgetting her name right now. And the one that I love is called Amelia, and that one is about this woman. She is very codependent on her mother, but she comes home with this African statue of like this, he used to be like some king or shaman or something like that, and it's this little doll. And so it has this gold chain around it, and she's going to give it to her boyfriend that she's dating, because he's like this history professor, right? Which, oh my gosh, look, you're into writing history. It's so serendipitous, right? But she ends up canceling the date because she has to go see her mother because her mom got mad at her. And so the chain drops off of this little doll thing, and the doll comes to life and starts attacking her. And it's amazing. If you've never watched it, it's on YouTube. It's so great. It's called Trilogy of Terror. I mean, the first two are okay movies, but the third one, Amelia, golden. You got to watch it.
I'll definitely check it out. It does sound interesting.
So good. I mean, it's creepy. It's very 1970s, but she's a great actress. Karen Black, that's who it is. So
I think
a few years ago.
I do think that old horror movies have this very specific style that is very attractive, and it's not just like modern horror movies where you just have jump scares left and right. They make you feel the ambience of the horror within the movies themselves. They pull you into the story, and that's why I love them rather compared to new movies.
Yes. I mean, the weird thing was I was watching that movie on my laptop in my office because I was doing some writing. And then I go downstairs and it's dark and it's like 11:30 midnight. And I'm like, oh my God. And every sound I'm hearing, I'm like, oh my God. I'm so freaked out, but I'm just like, I hope some little African doll doesn't come out and start attacking me. It's so wild. But yeah, definitely a must see. So tell us about yourself, Andrei. I mean, I found you. Someone posted your writings from Medium on Facebook, and I was very intrigued. I forget which ones you posted because I started reading all of your work, and then I was just like hooked in, like you just said. I was just like, oh my God, this stuff is so good. And that's why I decided to call this Literary Freak Show, because you love writing about these freaky stories, which are so interesting.
Well, where do I start? Right. Okay, so originally I'm from Romania, but I've moved in the UK in the past 14 years. I started writing about 4 years ago when I was in my second year doing another undergraduate course, my bachelor's course. And I was studying business management originally, and I really needed something to set me aside, forget about all the coursework that I was doing. And history always intrigued me. I always loved history, and not just the boring history of, oh, the Cold War, the Roaring Twenties, or any other modern specific events that have happened, medieval or whatever, ancient. I was really intrigued in finding, those unheard of stories, those people that no one has ever spoken about. That's why I really started researching, and that's why I also came to create my publication, which is called History of Yesterday. We all almost already have over 400 writers that are I'm trying to make them follow the same style as me, try to research for these golden gems within history and show it to the world, really educate. And my mission was about making history fun, so it would really attract the audience. It would attract everyone to, get more acknowledged in history and really see the value within history. And I think the most important part is actually learning the valuable lessons from history, but at the same time, sort of applying what we have learned in everyday life. And that's why I really started looking into what we call the lives of different people, as I like to say it, the people who have actually been into live freak shows. We see them as very different, but deep in their hearts, I think they're the kindest people, and that's because they see life from a different perspective. They're faced with so many challenges, especially in this judgmental society. And I just try to put myself into their shoes, and it seemed so impossible. And I couldn't just bear a second to live in their shoes, because I wouldn't even know where to start. Or is there a point living in life, when you are born so different and you're just being judged by everyone? And I'm very sorry from jumping from one point to another. I am terrible at this.
No, you're just right on it. Let me tell you, I am so relating to you right now, because how I started Nurses and Hypochondriacs was very much the same way, because I had all these weird stories, and I always didn't feel I fit in with the nursing culture here in America, with my colleagues as a nurse practitioner. I felt as like an outsider. I was always the more creative one, but then being creative, I was really shut down as being not professional. That's what I got told a lot. And so I mean, being professional is very objective,
It
that
is,
whole
yes.
that whole word is, because is a comedian professional, is an actor professional? So why do I have different standards now when I'm trying to really do the same thing, in essence, teach, educate, bring, cure people, and stuff. But I once attended a art exhibit at the Los Angeles County Museum of Art, and Del Toro, the director, I forget his first name, but he did this whole thing on freak shows, and his story was so interesting. He he did, I mean, he was just like you. He was very drawn in to the old circus freak shows, where these people were born different and they were put on display, and he felt just so much empathy for them. And that's where I based my storytelling shows when I started to do the stage productions of Nurses and Hypochondriacs. It was all about empathy, because here I had several people who nobody wanted to listen to their stories, or nobody thought that their stories mattered. So this gave them a platform on the stage just to be themselves and embody their stories, very much like a freak show, and stuff. But uh, it's all very, very fascinating. So let's go ahead and talk about some of your stories. The one that I loved and really drew me in was the dolphin one, the woman who fell in love with NASA's drug and sex addicted dolphin.
That is, yes, I know that the
How did
title
you
itself.
find that piece? Because it's really old. It was in the 1960s, correct?
Yes, that's correct. Well, the way I try to find some of those more intriguing stories is look on different sort of forums, old forums, because that's where you really find the interesting stuff. But also, that's where you find a lot of fake stuff. So at the first time when I saw the headline, I was like, "This is fake. This is no way. This is true." And then when I started researching this, I was surprised. The moment I knew this was really true is there is an actual statement on NASA's website where they say they have actually funded this program, but they had nothing to do with it. So the moment I saw that this is on NASA's website, I knew I had to write about it. It probably took me like 2 weeks just to think of a headline because there's so many things going on within the
Oh
story.
my God. Yeah, there's so many things going on within it.
Just to give a small break through of the story. So what's going on here is that NASA has been working with a few scientists within the neurology scientific world, and what they were trying to do is they're trying to achieve a higher cerebral capacity within the brain. Our brains only can reach 10% of cerebral capacity. We cannot use 100% of our brain because that would be really amazing. I mean, our capabilities as humans are still limited very much. The only organism within our planet that can use 20% of cerebral capacity are dolphins. This is why
Wow.
dolphins were used in this experiment. And what they were trying to do is they were trying to see how can they make dolphins to unlock even more, a higher percentage of their cerebral capacity. And in order to do this, they had to stimulate the brain somehow. And the best thing when it comes to stimulating the brain, apparently, is LSD.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. So, but first, before they stimulated the brain with LSD, they had this dolphin, which they called Peter, live with
Yes.
this woman. Okay. And the woman slept on a saltwater bed. She did her work in this aquarium thing, right? Where Peter would be able to come and sleep with her, like touch her. And they were supposed to have this constant contact, right?
So the way it was made is that it was planned for 10 weeks where this woman would literally live with Peter in a studio that was separated in three parts. One of them was an office area where the woman would spend most of her time, do her work, talk on the phone, write some stuff down. And obviously in each room, Peter had access. The second room was like a playroom where they would both spend time, swim around. They had more water there. And the third one was the bedroom where it was an area full of water and a small pod elevated as a bed where she could sleep and Peter could also come and snuggle in, I guess.
Oh, weird. It's so weird.
Yeah, and
So I think the scientist that was watching this, he thought this was taking too long. So then that's when he decided, I'm gonna go
yes.
ahead and give this dolphin LSD to speed up this process. And he was successful in that because it made the dolphin horny, right?
The idea, the reason why the woman was there was to also stimulate through a psychological pattern of behavior, the dolphin's behavior, and to show that he has more cerebral capacity. But obviously the dolphin himself showed that he is emotionally clever and he wanted to be attracted to the woman, and obviously he wanted something else from the woman instead. That is where his natural I could say senses came to light.
Right, because he had a hard on, which we can talk about this show. He had a hard on, and then she was stroking his penis,
And for
which
those who
I just was like, what?
And I
That,
was the same. And my most difficult part was how do I prove this to my audience? How do I write about this? And they were probably all going to call me lies or anything. But I was lucky because I think it was 2017 or the previous year where the woman had an interview about this whole
Yes.
thing, and she admitted it in the interview. It was nothing sexual on her part. It was all sexual for Peter. This is what she said.
Yeah. But then I think he got violent, correct? The dolphin got violent.
Yes.
They stopped, like NASA, I think, stopped the funding and said, we're not
No,
going to fund this anymore.
so what happened is the story obviously got to the media, and once it got to the media, it exploded. The world got angry. PETA was there calling it animal abuse, and obviously when NASA got in the headlines and they were getting a bad name, they had to stop the whole project itself. The scientists got a really bad reputation. They got revoked by any school, and it all went bad. And after that, Peter was removed from the lady, and that's where Peter, sadly, we don't know exactly what happened. Some people think he might have died from a depression. Some think that due to the amount of LSD he consumed during the experiment, it may have had some problems to his lungs, and he stopped breathing one day and just passed away, sadly.
So sad. So sad. I know he died in Florida, and they said he died of a broken heart. Oh, super
It
sad.
could be possible. I do believe in death from a broken heart.
I do believe that too. I've read many stories. Yeah, it could be. So I love that one. Let's get into a story that's a little bit more current with the zone of death. And that you wrote about that, focused on the whole Gabby Petito murder.
I actually found out at the end of my research that some people actually linked it to Gabby Petito's murder, which I wasn't aware about because,
wow.
yeah, I didn't know. And some people said it just because the last time she was seen, she was near the death zone. She was in Yellowstone Park.
Yeah, and I think in that area there's over 800 women that went missing. I don't have the correct stats or the information that goes with it, the research, but there's been a lot of high strange in that area. But why is it hard to go ahead and commit someone of killing someone there? Why is it so easy to get away with murder in that area?
So the problem with the death, the zone of death, as they call it, it's a part of Yellowstone. Well, Yellowstone. Let's start off like this. Yellowstone Park is part of a small part of it is found in Idaho, and this is where the problem is. And let's say if someone were to commit a murder in this small zone, I think it's 50 square miles, if I'm not wrong. What would happen is they obviously would be incarcerated by the local law enforcement. And then what the actual American Constitution says is that any person who has committed any crime must be prosecuted within the local region by a jury from the local region. And frankly, no one lives there. That is the problem. So it's really difficult to actually have a lawyer prove that someone has committed a murder, because that would mean breaking the American Constitution, and I don't see any jury who would actually do that because they'll probably get fired or something. When I was writing the article, I spoke with a few lawyers about this, and some of them said it isn't impossible to prove that that person has committed a murder and put them behind bars, but it would be really difficult, and it would be probably a case that would take up to 10 years.
Wow.
Yeah,
That's insane.
it takes a long time. It really, and I would never really understand why it takes such a long time to battle out, in a juridical mode. But I think the problem is, there's so much happening out there, and there are so many different laws that they have to go through, and you have lawyers from one side to another trying to find a loophole just to win the battle.
That's so crazy. Oh my gosh. Yeah, that was an interesting one that I read. I didn't even know. I actually did not follow the Gabby Petito case. I didn't understand why they were bringing so much media coverage just to her when there's so many people that go missing. every year. And I was like, why her? And maybe this is why. I don't know. But then there's also speculation that it is not a real case, that it could be a made up fake case. But who knows? In order to smokescreen other things going on in the world, which could very well be, because there's been so much and a lot of very interesting pictures that look made up to me. And that's my opinion. Now, if somebody out there actually knows her and has valid proof that this is real, I'm all good with accepting that. But until then, we'll see. I just thought it was a very strange case as compared to many other people who go missing. Okay, but excellent read. Let's jump into the miracle medicine that disfigured thousands of children, and that's the thalidomide tragedy that is I found very, very interesting, because they were giving thalidomide, which this didn't happen in the United States, but mostly happened in Europe, where women were taking it because they were nauseous, correct?
Yes, and it didn't happen in the United States because the FDA actually stopped it, because the United States was the first country to actually have an organization to check every medical drug that was going out from these pharmaceutical services. It started in the late 1950s, early 1960s, where a German pharmaceutical company tried to develop a drug that obviously didn't exist until then, that would help a pregnant woman with every medical problem that they would have, such as nausea, headaches, high fevers, or anything during pregnancy. The problem was that this medicine was only tested on animals. It was never tested on humans.
Oh
Although
my
it was only
gosh.
tested on animals, they said, oh, it's okay for human consumption. When the drug was first given out, sold in Germany, it was amazing. It really did what it said it would do. But the problem is, it started saying it will do a lot more things than it's meant to. And that's where the whole medical industry blew up, and everyone was buying the patent for this drug. It's sold under 42 different brands worldwide. And I think it was 56 different countries at the time, mainly in Central Europe. After a year of being sold, and obviously women that were pregnant and took the drug started bringing their babies to life, they saw that a lot of their babies sadly were born without a limb, or maybe even more limbs, either their feet or without their hands or arms even at some point. Some cases were even more lethal, I could say, in that way, where the babies will either be born, the twins would be stuck together in different manners, or yeah, it's really hard to describe the sort of malformations these babies would suffer from this terrible drug. If you want, you can have a look at the article I've written. I have to warn you, some explicit images that
Oh
are
yeah,
not for the
so
faint of
good.
hearts.
Right.
And obviously, once this happened, the world actually blew up, because at first the doctors didn't understand why this was happening. It took 4 years to find out that thalidomide, the drug itself, was actually causing this. And even to this day, the medical world doesn't understand what exactly within the drug is causing these medical issues within newborn babies.
Yeah, that is too crazy. I mean, I even wonder if it may have created some genetic issues in the DNA, or maybe had messed up the people's DNA. There is a
Yeah,
theory
it
that
could be.
your DNA does shift and change. Uh, uh, yeah, I don't have any. People always go, where's your peer reviewed research? I don't have that right now, so I'm not
I
going to go
do.
into it too much. It is just a theory. It can shift because of certain medications you're given. Who knows? We don't know.
I
People even study that with the vaccines and everything.
Yeah, I do have a different theory that I have linked actual medical research to it within the article, where they say that the drug itself has a chemical within the drug that stops the process of limbs growing within new toddlers
Wow.
when they're still in the belly of the
Oh
pregnant
my
women.
gosh.
That's their only theory. But because there are so many different malformations that had occurred because of this drug, they can't find an actual source of what is causing this.
Oh,
So
wow.
it's still a mystery, but there is some sort of happy ending to this. In some Western countries, more well-developed countries and stronger economical countries, they are actually financially supporting babies who are now grown-ups who have suffered because of the drug throughout their whole
Saw
life.
that.
So yeah,
I saw that. So that is the positive of it because it's a lifelong disability,
it
and
is. Yeah.
like they may not be able to get normal jobs like everybody else. But yeah.
I mean, I myself can't imagine living life without a finger, but I can't even describe it without a hand. It's terrible.
Yeah, I hear you. I used to work at the Children's Hospital here in Los Angeles. And where I worked, we saw all the pre-surgery kids or
Oh.
all the patients going in surgery. So I've seen everything. And we used to have special cases that came from other parts of the world.
Mm.
Our plastic surgeons would go out to very interesting places and bring the kids that needed the most help. And sometimes we'd see the most disfigured kids. I mean, I'd see my most interesting case to date, and actually the History Channel was following this case. I got cut. I did the assessment on the child, but I ended up on the floor. They cut my piece out there, but it was really interesting. So this kid, I forget where he came from. I think Nepal, and the surgeon had gone to Nepal and had brought this kid and his family back, and he had a twin on top of him, like he had another body. So the twin did
Mm,
not split. So it was still, he was about a year old. And so he had this other body on top of him, right?
I see.
Or no, it was actually hugging him. It was as if the twin was hugging him. But the limbs, it didn't have a head. It had a torso. It had these things that looked like legs and arms. But the one thing that was very interesting that it did have fully formed was the penis was fully formed. So, which the kid flopped and the body flopped. The kid was fine. He was perfectly happy, super cute baby. I remember it flopped and I was like, whoa, fully formed penis. Well, isn't that interesting? Um, and but the buttocks was not formed. It was just like a hump, but the penis was fully formed, which was interesting. But they had to get rid of this body, this stump, because the baby was now having cardiac problems because
Mm.
its poor little heart was beating for two bodies. So and so he was starting to have all kinds of issues. But yeah, I don't, I think the family ended up going back to Nepal after the surgery and stuff. But yeah, but
I
very
really
interesting cases.
I really understand you because you see, I come from a family that's full of medics, doctors, surgeons, and every time I go back home, especially for Christmas, everyone just starts with their stories. So, what did you pull out of this guy today? What did you pull out of this guy today? And I'm like, I'm trying to have dinner here. Could you guys please
Yeah, it's
stop?
probably where you're like the historian, right?
I'm the only
Medical
person who
historian.
hasn't actually gone into medicine within the family. And I wanted to, this is why a lot of my articles are part of the medical world because it really attracts me. But the one thing I couldn't do, which I don't understand how my family do, is if I were to follow the path of a doctor, a nurse, a surgeon, whatever specialty, I couldn't bear the moment I would see my first patient die. I just
Ah,
couldn't. That
yeah.
would be so tragic for me. It would be enough probably for me to go suicide or something. I could not bear that moment. And my uncle, who's a surgeon, he remembers his first person who had died, and it was pretty much the same. But he had this doctor who was educating him through the process, and told him, "This is you did what you could best. This is going to be the first of many. You can't save them all, and that's something you
Yeah.
have to understand." But they're amazing people, and I sympathize them for what they do, and I just couldn't do it myself. As much as I
Yeah.
like it, I couldn't bear it.
It is definitely the toughest part. I have not been in those incidences where I've lost patients, very few, very, very few, which has been an interesting case. I don't know why. I always tell myself I'm where I'm supposed to be and I give the care that I'm supposed to give at that time. So it's almost like I'm called, and I just go with my heart. So, but yeah, but medical historian is actually a thing. Did you know that?
I heard about this.
There's a PhD in London. You could get a PhD. There's this Lindsay Fitzpatrick, I think, or Fitzharris. I have one of her books. And she wrote, I'm looking at it right now. It's called The Butchering Art. Okay, so she is Fitzharris. Yes, Lindsay Fitzharris. So she is a medical historian. And in her I mean, she writes books about all kinds of very interesting things. And she has a YouTube channel as well. So you never know. I
I'll
mean,
definitely check it out. But as much as I like medicine, I have to stick with everything else as well. The world is open and it's brilliant and it's full of so many things, especially in history, from I don't know, from engineering to any sort of technology to even these really interesting but weird cases.
Yeah. Let's jump into another one. I like this one. The woman who gave birth in her grave 10 days after her death. So this one was interesting.
That is a really interesting one. Yes, it is. The first time that I saw this again, I thought, this seems a bit sketchy. I don't know if this is true. One of the biggest parts within the work that I do is actually do the proper research, make sure that everything is true, have the proper resources that are reliable. And I like it. I absolutely love it when I find a story that also has some academic research behind it. And so did this one. This is where some archaeologists and I think it was, I can't remember from the top of my head. I think it was, what year was it? I don't remember exactly what year. I think it's pretty recent. I think it was 2018, if I'm not mistaken.
You're right. Yes, 2018. Yes.
Some archaeologists have found the remains of a woman who, after carbon footprint analysis, it turned out to be from within the 16th century, I think it was. And it was really surprising because right next to her remains, there were some little bones representing a toddler. So what we believe, what the research team believes, is that she actually gave birth after she had been buried alive.
Right.
Which is something possible based on medical research. It's called, actually, there is a term where it's called coffin birth or post-mortem fetal extrusion. This is where after the body dies, the gases remaining within the body build up within the stomach, and the stomach has to release all that gases out. But because the fetus were there, it couldn't do that. So the gases actually managed to push the fetus out once it was ready to be born. Now, obviously, we don't know if the fetus was already dead when he was given birth or if he wasn't, but presumably if he was, he would have died from the pressure caused by the earth. The alignment of the bones and how the bones are placed within the grave shows that most probably the fetus was actually dead before being given birth.
Right. And then the fetus just kind of spontaneously came out.
Burst out. Yeah.
With my head. Yeah, it's very, very interesting. But you also consulted an OB, an obstetrics doctor here in San Francisco. I read like a quote, maybe you found a quote somewhere on how she kind of said this is how it happens, but it's exactly how you said it. So yeah, very interesting. Okay, how about the US government injected citizens with plutonium without them even knowing it? And that was at the Manhattan Project, right?
This is, yes.
Gotta love our government and all these great tests that they do on people and dolphins, and it's just amazing.
I mean, there is another, just to make a small break here, there is another article that I've written quite a while ago. I think it's over a year, where I think it was in 1940 or the 1950s, where some US prisoners, I can't remember the state that this happened in, they were given milkshakes with hepatitis, so they can see what. Yes, I will send you the link after this if you want to have a read of that. It's really interesting.
Oh yeah.
But getting back to the plutonium, people being injected with plutonium. So what happened is, obviously, we are at the end of World War II, and with the help of Albert Einstein, we were finally discovered how fusion works, and we were able to create atomic bombs. we had the plutonium, we had all the knowledge that we needed to, but we didn't necessarily know what would happen with the workers and the scientists working on the Manhattan Project. What would happen if they're being exposed too long to plutonium or other nuclear materials? So what's the best way to find out? Inject some people and see what happens. As bad as it may sound, but that's the US government for you. At least that was the US government for you at the time.
I don't think it's changed very much.
I am
My
not the one
opinion.
I'm not, I don't live in the US. I'm not a US citizen, so I'm not entitled to speak about US
Right.
politics.
I
And I
pay
hate
taxes, so yes, I'm going to speak about it. So there.
if you want me to speak about the British politicians and the
I don't
political
know. It's
system
our
within the
world
United
is just
Kingdom,
in crazy turmoil. It's
yeah,
crazy all over the world. And we can
it is
all,
indeed.
I think, agree at that. But go on. Go on with the story.
So what they started is doing a trial where they would take different patients. I think it was 18 people that had been selected to be injected with plutonium. One very interesting case, there was a man who actually went for a checkup at a local hospital that was near the site where the Manhattan Project was happening at the time. And at the beginning, the doctors over there who checked them, who were also scientists, part of the Manhattan Project, part of this project of injecting plutonium, told him he has cancer, and that they found some sort of new cure that might help him, which was plutonium. But obviously he wasn't told that is plutonium. He just told this was a cure, this might help you. So they injected one, which was one of the highest doses of plutonium someone had been injected with. And according to scientists nowadays, they said that it was enough to kill a horse, but let alone a man itself. Finding out later on when he went for the checkups after 2 months, when after being injected with plutonium, they found out that actually he didn't have cancer at all, and he was perfectly fine. What surprised them even more is that there weren't any significant changes in his body after being injected with so much plutonium. And what they learned from that is based on different organisms, some people are more resilient to it than others. But inevitably, as the rest of the people, he also passed away. Some people say it wasn't from the plutonium, but I think it was definitely from the
I
plutonium.
think it was definitely from the plutonium. And it brings to a point that's very interesting that I've said for many, many years, where I think that vaccines need to be person specific, or at least somehow
Yeah.
DNA specific. I really think something is happening to people, but nobody wants to realize that theory that I have. I mean, I've told that to several people and they start screaming at me. So, you know,
Oh,
I'm just like,
it's
as a scientist, I learned in third grade when I started doing science projects and I won third place. Okay. I learned that you can hypothesize and create theories, and that's how you prove things. And that's
yeah.
just a theory that I've had. And nobody will go ahead and look into it. Do you know why? Because it doesn't make money. So if it made money, if there was some way I can make a profit off of it, then probably someone would study it. But other than that, it's probably never going to be studied. And I'm sure many other very prominent scientists have thought the same thing as I have and have been shoved down. So, c'est la vie.
just as politics or everything else, the science
Yeah.
world, the medical world is very bureaucratic. They will choose to believe whatever they want to believe. And I'll give you a very specific example. Another article that I've written a long while was about a very, very interesting scientific case that even to this day, although it has been done by a man of science who had many years of schooling, he was certified in everything. So what he was trying to do, this was in the 19th century, I think it was 1840s or something like that. He was trying to find out if our souls, if souls within our bodies actually exist. Because based on the
I love that.
physics, if
Yeah.
something exists, it can be measured, right? So what
Right.
he done is that he took patients who had terminal illnesses, who were almost about to die. He would take the beds within hospitals and he would put scales uh, beneath the beds. So what he would do is he would always measure every 5 minutes. He would measure the weight taking away the weight of the bed, the weight of the patient, and after he passed away, he would weigh the patient again. And he found out that the weight of a soul is approximately 21 grams.
I love that. Oh my God. It's
But
fascinating.
the scientific world disapproved of the theory, even though it worked. He said that the project itself, the putting the theory to practice, it was flawed. His test, it wasn't right, wasn't this, wasn't that. But
But it was a very
to
basic
me,
test. All he's doing is weighing people. It
it
was
was a
very
basic test,
basic.
but we need to understand that that was the 19th century. It was, a primitive time for science world. It was a primitive time for modern medicine. What could you expect? But this just goes to show, if people can't believe it, it's something, souls is just something we talk about in religion. We don't really talk about it in scientific terms or in medical terms. People disapprove of it. Well, they shouldn't. If we provide justification, proof, we should believe in it. Obviously, there could be more done to prove that. But just
Well,
like you
it's
said,
because of people's belief systems, and you
yes.
just said it. And if their belief system won't go there, won't allow them to be open and accept other theories as that, they're not going to go there. They're like, it's false. Like here in the States, I don't know if they have Morgellons in London, but there are people who suffer Morgellons, and there is a group of nurses with PhDs. They have their doctorate in nursing practice, who many doctors discounted these poor patients, and they were the ones who really pushed and figured out that what the cause was. And the cause was it's it's a form of Lyme disease that's that these specific patients are producing a form of keratin that's coming up in their skin.
Mm,
Okay. And so they figured this out. Like they went and got these scientists and they worked together and they figured out that this could be a cause. It's very easy to be treated with antibiotics. And they made there's a movie on Amazon Prime about it, which is really great. It's called Skin Deep. I hope to have the director on my show one day, or some of the nurse practitioners as well, discussing their whole process. Because many people, because I went ahead and posted the video clip about that, and so there were nurse practitioners. I put them on it. I put it on a Facebook site. So there were several nurse practitioners that immediately said, Morgellons is a fake disease. It doesn't exist. Even though I was like, you didn't even watch the movie. You know, you see, there's proven evidence. These people went through this whole process. It's so good, you know. But still, because her belief system won't go there, and many of the doctors, one of the guys in the movie, his brother was a doctor, one of the patients, and his brother said, "You are crazy," to his I believe it was a twin brother. It was super sad, you know. And at the end, once they got proof and once his brother got healed, he reneged that. He said, I'm very sorry to not have believed my brother that there was a cure, but everybody has always said Morgellons is not a real illness. It's, it's fake.
yeah.
When there was, people were saying, well, what are these fibers in my skin, coming out? Explain that. But do you see how they'll shove down? And that's a great example. So I just want to wrap it up with the end of the world topics that you talk about, which you have many. You have meteor showers, you have an IBM computer. Talk about the IBM computer one. I haven't really read through that one. I just saw it now.
So
The
IBM
night,
computer is actually really interesting, and it's perfect with the topic that we were discussing, where people
yes.
would disapprove scientific theories and scientific hypotheses. There have actually been 3 big whole books written about this, and people still do not approve of it. There's been years of research and research. So the way that what has happened here is some students who were becoming young researchers at IBM during the 1970s, I think it started in 1973. They decided to do a program called World System 3. So what the program would do, it analyze how our world will develop from a financial, economical perspective, from a medical perspective, from all sorts of perspectives. And once the program was given a certain algorithm, it was inputted the population of the world, how much carbon dioxide we were producing, how much fossil fuels we were consuming, all sort of different statistics. the computers show that the world will end by 2050, by the way everyone is living, by the way people are treating the world, by our own lifestyle. And people were really outraged because obviously this was a time where computers were just a new thing. Technology, people didn't really trust this sort of technology at the time, so they were really outraged. Oh, a computer can't say, what's going to happen with the world in 50 years. Well, it sort of got it right, because I've looked at some patterns, I've done some research, and within the graphs that the program produced, it was showing exactly how the population will go up as the world goes on, and how the resources will plummet. And I'm talking about vital resources that we need, especially one important resource that would cause this sort of end of the world scenario where we would have a big apocalypse and it would just be civil wars everywhere, would be the food per capita.
Yeah.
Food will go really scarce, and obviously that is the main resource we need. And we see food as, something as a basic need, but in all honesty, food itself is a luxury, and it is a luxury in so
Yes,
many
I believe that.
developing countries, but we take food for granted. We
We
take food for
do.
granted very much. So even with all the research that has been done, even with all the books that have been written, which to me, I have read one book. I haven't had the time to read all three of them. I just read the one that had the highest ratings, and it shows black and white exactly how the world has evolved since 1973 until now, and how most probably the world will carry on. And I don't think it's going to be exactly 2050 that's, the world is going to really start going upside down and we are really going to fight for resources, but it is definitely going to be within this century, I believe.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy. It's almost like this computer, there was an artificial intelligence created in this
Yeah, you
computer.
could say it was the first sort of artificial intelligence created out there, the sort of first algorithm that was actually going to say try to predict the world. And I think that's where people got really angry, because it was trying to predict the future.
Right. Right. But as we see now, I think it's really interesting because there's been those theories about COVID and population control, for example, with Bill Gates, who was trying, I mean, and he's known to be a eugenicist. I mean,
Yeah.
he's said it. I've watched videos of him and his wife going to Africa and trying to get people to stop overpopulating and stop having 10 children, and they thought that, oh yes, you should have 2 or 3 children. Maybe there's a method to their madness. I mean, I don't know. I think it's kind of interesting that it was a computer, and then Bill Gates is in computers, kind of an interesting pattern, but who knows. But do you think that if they cut down on the population, that they would save the world? Is that what's going on? I
I don't
don't know. You don't
I
think
wouldn't
so?
think so. No,
No. You
because
see?
it's about the way we live. It's not about how many people are there. If we all learn, if even if the population went 10 times bigger, we have the space on Earth. But if we learn to live in a prosperous way that wouldn't damage the world, but will actually be a lot more helping to the world will give a lot more to us. When I say that, I mean food resources.
Yeah, I believe that. I totally believe that. So super awesome. Anything you want to add? I mean, tell us about where to find all your incredible writing, which is so fascinating. I love it.
So I think I will give you a link so you can post just people somewhere if they are interested to find out my about my writings. I write for History of Yesterday, which is my own publication. I also have about 400 other writers who sort of write the same stuff that I do. So you will find a lot of interesting articles over there. One more thing that I wanted to say, and I saved this special for tonight. I've written this article last week. I've been working on it, but I have published it today. Actually published an hour ago when we started the podcast. It's about so the title of the article, for those that may be interested or captivated, a virus considered eradicated in 2019 just
Oh,
made
I
a
saw
comeback.
that. Yes. I was like, oh,
Yes,
I
it's
hadn't seen this before. So,
it's about, yes, this has just been recently published. It's about polio.
yes.
As some of you may know, in 2019 polio was considered globally eradicated. It didn't exist. And all of a sudden, there are a few cases within Ukraine that have taken place just last week.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so
Really?
within the
Polio?
article, I talk about some of the important milestones within, the history of polio and how humanity has tried to combat that, especially the scientific and medical world. And I also talk about a theory that looks within the history of polio, and some archaeologists that have looked into the ancient Egyptian scripture have seen some scriptures that may actually say that polio was here about even 5,000 years ago. So it
Wow.
may just be the oldest virus that humanity has been dealing with.
Again, I think these viruses, and again, it's just a theory because I'm a scientist. I'm hypothesizing. I think they lay dormant, I mean,
Yeah, yeah.
Lyme disease lays dormant in your microbiome, and there's lots of research to support that. And I've even researched it myself. It lies dormant and then it flares up and then it goes dormant again. Okay. And that is a bacteria that the Lyme, the line that the tick, it comes off of the tick and stuff. But I believe that a lot of these viruses do lay dormant in people's DNA or in people's genetic structures and then kind of mutate and come alive. I mean, who knows? Is it the vaccines turning them on? So it could be.
It
I
might
don't know.
be.
I don't know. Kind of
just
interesting to
just
look
like you
at.
mentioned just like you mentioned before, every organism is very different, and I think when when you inject someone with something that you're just generalizing it's going to work for everyone, it's
Yeah.
definitely going to create some mutations along the way.
Yeah, I'm watching this really interesting movie on Hulu. It's called Dope Sick, which I hope to do an episode on it. And it's about the oxycodone
Mm.
epidemic that went on in America here. And what they did was because there were patients were having breakthrough pain when they were giving them one dose, so they started putting out there, well, we need to individualize the dose. So pharma and that Purdue company really pushed this. It needs to be individualized. It needs to be individual. Everybody's pain is different. Well, that's interesting because that was their marketing strategy. But I do believe that it is true, that every person is different. And every genetic makeup is very different. So, and needs to be and care needs to be
Yeah,
individualized. So
it
not
does.
everybody is the same. So cool. Thank you so much, Andrei. And I hope to have you on again. I will link your writings and your websites to the show notes for anybody who would like to read them. And I do encourage you guys to read them. I'm also going to put the one on polio that you just wrote on my newsletter that I'm going to be sending out. So that should be a very interesting one to read. So thank you so much, Andrei, for being on the show.
Thank you
And
very
nurse,
much for having me. I had
yes,
loads of fun.
super fun, super fun. Till next time. Bye-bye.
Bye.